Hello, good evening, and welcome to the fourth Vaishali Dialogue. My name is Sharan Setty, and you're watching Citti Media. Recently, the Chief Minister of Karnataka made a comment that they intend to bring in an anti-conversion law, which seems to have ruffled some feathers in the Christian community and the church. Now, the Archbishop of Bangalore has been on a media spree where he's been talking to almost every news channel and he's been conducting press conferences saying that this is a clear violation and that only the Christians have been targeted. To discuss this, we have Rami Desai, Jerome Anto, and Esther Dhanraj. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Namaste and welcome. I hope all of you are good.
Thank you, Sharan.
Namaste, Sharan.
Namaste, namaste. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. Ramiji, would you like to set the context for us? Now, why can't conversions happen is what the church is probably asking, because if the Christians are able to convert, so are the others.
Sharan, thank you for inviting me on this dialogue with such eminent co-panelists. I can only give my two bits in. Now, you see, religious conversion is something that I have seen very closely, especially in the context of the Northeast. We have to understand, what does religious conversion mean? It means truly, religious conversion is a process that entails a change in your religious affiliation, in your worldview, and moreover, so in your identity. Now, as far as I am concerned, any of this should only happen if you have a burgeoning spiritual need. You see another faith offer you and complete this need for your spirituality that your present faith doesn't do. Therefore, when we talk about religious conversion and we talk about bringing in laws against religious conversion, right, there is a very important line that we have to discuss, which is, why is the religious conversion happening? Now, is it happening because it's fulfilling that person's spiritual need, or is it happening because that person has decided, gone out, looked for this new faith and said, okay, this fulfills my need? Or is it happening because there is some amount of inducement, fraudulent means, some sort of coercive tactics that are being used? And why is the whole debate in today's date so focused on missionary activity? Is because it is very visible that large amounts of populations have been converted within the last 50 years, within the last 100 years. Let's say, look at the Northeast. The Northeast in the last 100 years is pretty much completely converted. Now you tell me, does that mean that every single person who converted, over 1 crore of people, and this is just a loose estimate, I think when the census comes out, we are in for a bigger shock, that they have converted because everybody had a spiritual experience? It's not possible. It has been very clear. If you go back into the Northeastern history, it is very clear. You just need to go back and study history to understand that the reason that conversions began because it was a policy initiative by the British government to civilize what they considered was an really uncivilized society. And they used every tactic in the book to do that, including give government funds for educational institutions. Now, does that fall under coercion? Of course it does, because if you want to give education, you should give it irrespective of anybody's faith or, anybody's affiliation. But you are giving that education where you have missionaries who are teaching, where you have prayers that children are compelled to partake in, that all belong to one religious, one religion. So, I think this debate is a very fine debate. I think it's very important for us to not get mixed up, which is what happens more often than not in urban cities, where they say, well, people have the right to propagate religion. Of course, legally you have the right to propagate religion, but why are we talking about that? What we should really be talking about is, does that propagation include Fraudulent means, does it include inducement? Does it include coercion? If it does, that is illegal by our law as well.
Right.
So,
Thank you so much. Very interesting. But I really wish that the Archbishop could actually join us so that we could hear the other side of the conversation too. But because of his absence, I'm going to play the role of the anchor and the Archbishop. So please do excuse me. And I'm going to ask you a small follow-up, Ramiji. Now, individually, if I choose to accept economic incentives to convert into a different religion, that's my choice.
absolutely, that may be your choice, but that doesn't mean that it is legal. And why is it your choice? Are people, are missionaries able to convert somebody from, let's say, a middle class background, upper middle class background? No. The minute you are converting somebody from an economically vulnerable strata of society, it doesn't become a choice of theirs. You are fulfilling, you are inducing a very basic human need of theirs, which, by the way, you could do without wanting something in return, because that is what the religion propagates. That, greed is one of the deadly sins. So, considering that, you're missionaries and you're propagating your faith, but you are doing it on the basis of an exchange, makes it wrong to begin with. But having said that, the person who's receiving it, more often than not, is not receiving it because he is signing an agreement.
Right.
He's receiving it because he probably feels that his children will get a better education. He probably feels that his medical needs will be fulfilled. That should not be the condition. And let's say if we look at the Northeast and we look at tribal Vanvasis in very remote areas, they live a very different life. Their administrative frameworks are very different. They haven't come across this kind of influence, and therefore, for them to even think in ways where some of them probably don't even understand what they are giving up.
Right.
And therefore, you will notice that they usually, more often than not, continue following their practices.
Right.
Yet, convert on paper.
Right. This is a very interesting point. I'm glad you brought this up. Jerome ji, what Rami ji says is actually true. And in the conversation that we were having a couple of days ago, we were also explaining to our viewers about how many of these people are crypto Christians and they actually do not get converted on paper, but they reap the incentives that is given otherwise.
Absolutely, because for me, it is more to do with the politico-religious changes that is going to happen with the kind of missionary work that's prevalent in this country. So that's more important now because it is going to influence the electorate, the political scene of this country.
Right. And how have you seen the demographics change, especially in the context of Karnataka and South India, since we are at it?
What happens is this, with the influx of the missionaries and with the conversions, the people are brainwashed into voting to a certain political party or not voting a certain political party. We have been witness to such an experience since the last 10-15 years. Whenever there's an election, you will see that a particular clergyman or a church leader will make a press statement, and then there is a buzz in the country. So actually it influences the electorate. So in many ways, these missionaries are doubling up as political stooges. And it is dangerous for a democratic country like ours.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Esther ji, now you may have watched the press conference conducted by the Archbishop, and he goes into details and provides his propositions as to why he and the church are firmly opposed to the anti-conversion law that is being proposed. So could you take us in detail as to what your observations are as far as the Archbishop is concerned?
Yeah, first he says, I mean, some of the points he was making were very hilarious. I will tell you why in a bit. So first he says that the bill is unnecessary. In other words, he means that there are no forced conversions.
Right.
So why bring a bill against it? And then the question will be, if there are no forced conversions, what is the Christian community afraid of, basically? So,
Right.
no forced conversions, no fraudulent conversions. So why is the Christian community protesting against it? Because this law is not against propagation of religion, right? And he keeps going back to the constitutional right of propagating religion, that this law is against forceful, inducement-based, coercive conversions.
Right.
Why not just let the bill pass as a preemptive measure against inducement-based conversions? I mean, according to the Archbishop, there are no forced conversions right now.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, then why not just let the bill pass as a preemptive measure, you know? And I think in his talk, he says that he's also against such preemptive measure, such forced conversions, such fraudulent conversions. Now let's talk about unnecessary things, you know, unnecessary laws. Now, who decides what law is necessary? Can a banking fraudster actually decide whether laws against fraud should be brought into place or not? And secondly, whenever there is a proposal to bring about a law against fraudsters, only those that are actively engaged in fraud will be rattled by it. Others will be unperturbed, right? And if fraud were a religious mandate, trust me, they would protest publicly like the Christian community is doing now.
Right.
So what is the Christian community afraid of? Time and again, you keep coming back to it. Why can't they just ignore it? Why make a big deal of it? For example, Saranji or Ramiji or Jerome-ji, all of us here will be, we will not be perturbed if tomorrow our judiciary brings a law that all rapists have to be stoned to death, like it is said in the Bible. Now, only a serial rapist will be rattled by it. Would you agree or not? Right? So here, that is what is happening with the Christian community right now. Much as the Archbishop says that there are no forced conversions or there are no fraudulent conversions by fraudulent means or inducement-based conversions, that is what they're engaged in, which is why they're so rattled by this whole topic.
Right.
And secondly, the Archbishop also says that it is arbitrary. And he thinks that this bill only targets the Christian community. Well, he is very right. When you're talking about laws against banking fraudsters, you only target banking fraudsters. You don't include the laws against rapists in that law, right? That will be a separate law for them. And here, this bill is particularly about conversions, and which is a religion that theologically demands, suggests, commands, and mandates conversions.
Right.
Of course, it is Christianity. And I want to remind the Archbishop the words from the Bible, where it says, you know, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So this is a clear mandate, and this has been called the Great Commission of Jesus Christ. And their religion, I mean, this is theologically a mandate for everybody to go out and convert whoever you see. So this is proselytizing, right? So of course, it is only Christianity that converts, and invariably every Christian, whether a career evangelist or a lay evangelist, they are actively engaged in proselytizing their neighbors and everybody in the community. So of course, it targets only the church.
Right. Thank you so much. Quite a strong statement coming from you, Jerome-ji. Why is the church so afraid of surveys being conducted? Is there a larger real estate angle behind this?
If you look at it, there are two proposals from the government, is what I've read in the media. One is the anti-conversion law, and the other one is the survey of church property, the churches and the worship centers.
Right.
Now, I was also going through the interview on NDTV, where the interviewer asked the bishop, "Don't you have a register of all the churches in the state?" No, the interviewer doesn't understand the church is not only the Roman Catholic Church, which is the Gothic buildings, the Roman style buildings. Today, the churches exist in every nook and corner of the geography. It happens in houses. It happens in halls. So, and I'm 100% sure the Archbishop does not have that kind of an information. Secondly, the church today is multi-denominational. When I said multi-denominational, there are several divisions in the church, and each division does not see eye to eye on each other.
Right.
They are competing with each other to enlarge their numbers. The Roman Catholic Church is the biggest church, but today the Roman Catholic Church itself is a victim to conversion. I, being a Roman Catholic, I have been so many times approached by these lay evangelists saying that, do you know the Bible? Do you know you are following the wrong path of the Bible? You should come to our church. This is also conversion. So the Catholic Church also is losing a lot of its members to these roadside conversion manias. The church today is not just the Roman Catholic Church. And very important for everyone to know, the Archbishop, which is the Catholic head of the Catholic Church, is not a representative of all the Christians. The other Christians don't recognize him as their leader. The Roman Catholic Church vertical head goes to the Vatican.
Right.
So this everybody needs to understand. There are 101 denominations in this country, and each denomination do not stand each other. If you put them in a room, they will kill themselves.
Right. There's a lot of truth to what you say, and Ramiji, I'll come to you with this. Last time we were having a conversation and we were talking about some educational institutes, which you and I have been a part of, and we've seen how education has played a very strategic role in terms of spreading and making Christianity cooler, and imbibing them into the pop culture that we see in Hollywood and Bollywood movies today. And in fact, today morning I was supposed to attend my reunion after like 5 or 10 years, and I received a message saying that you have to arrive at this place at this time, and the first thing we need to do is a holy mass with all of you people praying to Jesus. I said, I'll be happy to skip that, and after that I'll be happy to attend the reunion. But they said that was conditional. So we've seen this pattern emerge time and again. Do you see a larger pattern beyond the coercive conversions that happen on the ground? Do you see an institutionalized crypto Christianity across many institutions?
Well, I don't see it as an umbrella. Christianity, unfortunately, like my co-panelist just mentioned, has failed to bring about a uniformed Christianity under one common umbrella. So even if you go to the Northeast, let's say you go to Nagaland, even though we call them Nagas, there are 16 different tribes. So you have Owls, you have Angamis, you have so on and so forth. They have their own churches. So they're all Christians, but our church is different from the Angami church, So, they haven't been able to form a greater institution or a greater umbrella. But yes, what does happen and what I have noticed is somehow Christianity is associated to a better life, to being westernized, to being whiter than the whites, if I may say so. It seems like, and this kind of discrimination I've seen with the newer converts as well, not so much with the older ones, but the newer ones I find is that they look down upon all other religious groups, thinking that now we form a larger brotherhood with the Western states. For example, there have been many instances where pastors reverends have asked United States to come and help them. For example, in Nagaland, one of the senior leaders of the church actually said, if India does not listen to our demands, we will go to the United States of America. Now, what bonds them? The bonding comes from the religious affiliation. And what does that also bring in more cases than not? It brings a conflict in identity, that we are different to the rest of Bharat. We are not one of them. You were just converted 50 years. Yeah, you were just converted 50 years ago. Now, I'd really like to quote this. I love quoting this paragraph, so please bear with me for a minute. The reason I mentioned earlier that this was a policy initiative that still permeates through our veins. It's not just about the Christians, it's about other people also, other religious groups also who live within Bharat, the Hindus as well, who look at church-run educational institutions as being better than their own institutions.
Right.
And why is this so? Because again, this was a policy initiative. So this is a letter which was written between David Scott, who was the Commissioner of Assam, the Undivided Assam, and W.P. Bailey, who was the Secretary of the government, the British government. So he writes, I am satisfied that nothing permanently good can be obtained by other means, and that if we do not interfere on behalf of the poor Garos was a tribe, they will soon become Hindus or half Hindus, retaining and acquiring many of the bad parts. I would greatly prefer 2 or more Moravian missionaries of the old school who, along with religion, would teach useful arts. He also goes on to say, I have no doubt, he also goes on to say that the error that we are making in our conversion process is that we are trying to convert the Polish natives instead of root tribes who are still in that state of national childhood. Now, this is a very insidious statement, and this is the letter that went out to ask the British government to give grant for educational institutions where missionaries would be paid as teachers. So this was a complete fraud that was put upon us. That the government did not allow missionaries. There was a policy before the Charter Act of 1813, which basically said that missionaries couldn't interfere with native religions. Right. And 1813 completely gave them a free hand, so they started coming in and being paid as teachers. Now it talks about nationhood. Why does it say that in native communities, in the rude tribes, it's easier to embed nationhood? Because the idea is to give them a separate sense of identity as opposed to the national identity of Bharat. So this poses a huge problem, because these are the same people who are funding your school. So what are they teaching you? They're teaching you that because your religion is different, now because you have been converted, you are superior, you're not a part of the national identity, and that it is okay to convert vulnerable groups than to convert the Polish
policy. Even today, there has been no change at all. It's the same context.
In missionary-led educational institutions, do they not get preference of education? And I have had many instances where poor kids, who cannot afford an education, are lured by these missionaries. But once they go there, any object that signifies their own allegiance to their faith is asked to be removed, whether it's a tika, whether it's a moli. They cannot wear that and go into schools. So considering that we are naturally an egalitarian civilization, how do these ethics fit within our civilizational ethos? They don't.
Right. Rightly said. Esther ji, I mean, this point that Ramiji brings up, and specifically that one line in the letter quoted, it talks about certain practices of Hindus as being outdated, and this gives them a good ground for them to sort of go and proselytize further, right? Even today, one of the ways in which they are able to convert a lot of people, coercively or otherwise, is by saying that Hindus are very casteist people, and that we have the Varna system, and that we discriminate certain classes, which is why Christianity treats everybody as the same. But is this the case after people have converted to Christianity?
Actually, I want to take this back to to the statements that the Archbishop made during the press conference, and he was actually drawing comparison between a white girl or a white boy going to temples here in India. Coming from Christian countries, he was saying that people are going to a temple here. So, and then he was comparing that with the conversions. What is wrong with a Hindu becoming a Christian and going to church when people from Christian countries, that the whites or blacks, go to temples in India? So he was trying to compare these two things. But I would like to bring in what Ramiji just said, that there is a huge difference between a white person going to a temple and a Hindu going to a church. So when a Hindu starts going to a church, the Hindu transforms into anti-Hindu. I mean, by now he or she has become a Christian. So the Christian who comes from that Hindu background, once he or she starts going to a church, he transforms into anti-Hindu, anti-Sanskriti, and more often than not, an anti-national individual. So Christianity strips an individual of not just the Hinduness or the Sanskriti, it even strips one of patriotism. Because now your allegiance is not towards the country. It's toward, it's told that it's towards Jesus Christ, but in reality, it's not even towards Jesus Christ.
Right. It
doesn't matter where the allegiance is shifting. It's definitely shifting away from nationalism, from your nation. So conversion is not just a threat to Sanatan Sanskriti. I would say it's also a huge threat to Bharat's security, national security. So I've seen this time and again, and I've heard in some of those Christian conversations or YouTube videos where the Britishers are called the spiritual fathers. They call the Britishers as their spiritual fathers.
Even today.
And even today, yes, very recent. So, it's more than just changing the religion. And if you would ask, what is the harm of a Hindu becoming a Christian, when there are people who are becoming Hindus? The difference is, the huge difference is, show me at least one example, just one example, where a Hindu in foreign countries knocks on the doors of white people and trusts a copy of the Bhagavad Gita or the copy of Upanishad and tell them that if you don't believe in a certain deity, say Shiva, Vishnu, or Krishna, you will go to hell.
Right.
Come to my religion and you will experience miracles. Come to follow Jesus, follow Vishnu, and then all your human problems will be solved. Right. Whereas I will give you tens of lakhs of evidences, incidents, conversion stories, where these exact things are told to convert Hindu people into Christianity.
Right.
This is an open challenge. I would want just one example.
Sure.
I don't need many. So there is a huge difference. And this is why I said it's so hilarious. It's so hilarious comparing white people going to temples and a Hindu going to a church.
Right.
And he also makes this point, which Jerome ji already touched, about crypto Christians. I've heard this not just from the Archbishop, but Christianity in general still says that it keeps the number at 2%.
Yes.
But
That's one of the points that the Archbishop mentioned, saying that, there is not a demographic change, at least not to a very large extent. So why should
the question would then be, what do we do with?
Please give me a minute.
Yeah, what do we do with all the undisclosed number of Christians, which, if disclosed, would come to some double-digit percentage?
Right.
And let's also look at it this way. Let's say it's just 2% only. The question then would be, how are the churches procuring so much land to the tune of lakhs of acres? And for whom? If it's just 2%, why are they procuring so much land? And did you know that the church is the largest land owning organization in Bharat?
Right.
Where did all that money come from? And for whom, if they're only 2%? Now, will the church divulge all this information honestly? Where is the money coming from? To offer to lure the converts into the religion.
Which is perhaps why they're opposed to the survey. That explains that. Ramiji, did you want to come in?
Yes, I wanted to just add to what my co-panelist said. There was ample evidence and there was news of directives going out. And this is in Kanyakumari, where we've seen mass conversion happen in a very short while. The newly converted people were asked to not give Gazette notifications. So as long as they went to the church, as long as they read the Bible, as long as maybe they were baptized, that was good enough. They did not need to give Gazette notifications, which was a mandatory function earlier on. So as she said correctly, that how do we know that that is the number? Now, also what I would like to add is in my opinion, the question is not about whether they're converting or whether they're not. My point here is, are you doing it within the framework of what is legal? Why is it so difficult for them to accept that this merits investigation? And of course, if there's no inducement, there's no fraudulent means, there's no illegality, the church will come out with a clean chit. But the fact that there has been enough evidence and it is a crime, it is important for this sort of investigation or survey to happen. And this should not be, the church itself actually should be speaking up against this sort of inducement and fraudulent means.
Right. And if it was truly the church's concern, Ramiji, if you've seen the press conference, there were only legislators belonging to a certain political party. If they were to truly say that this is not a political issue, and Jerome-ji, maybe you can come in on this. Now, obviously, this is a clearly political issue. And this is not limited to the BJP legislators, because you've had legislators even from a regional party like the JDS saying that, we've been personally victims of such coercive conversions. And very recently, you wrote a very powerful letter that's gone viral and it's covered in the media, saying that you are a strong supporter of the proposed anti-conversion bill. What makes you so confident that these coercive conversions can be stopped as a mechanism proposed by this bill? You're on mute.
The legislation will not stop conversion, okay, because there are many ways of how people will convert, but definitely it will put a check to the conversion machinery. It will put a fear because there is full-scale conversion happening in the length and breadth of this country. Okay, and the only reason given is this: we are free to convert, because that's what even the bishop says, and that's what every missionary says. We have the constitution, and we'll do it the way we want it. Yeah. And it is a highly misused legislation. In fact, I have gone one step ahead, because if you look at all the missionaries, they have only one article that they keep quoting time and again, Article 25. See, I would say that I'm not really for the anti-conversion law at the state. I would want the government to look at the other center. The second thing is this Article 25 itself is very skewed because it says you have the opportunity, you are free to practice, profess, and propagate. This is contradictory to the Hindu way of life because Hindus don't go and convert.
Right.
But the idea of enlarging the flock is only on the Abrahamic religions, the two Abrahamic religions in our country. So for them, it is one of the best tools to use to propagate and to profess their faith. So I have written to the government. I recommend the government that they must look at it at a national level. There needs to be a discussion on Article 25. I strongly recommend that propagate needs to be removed. That is going to actually really help our nation because otherwise it is going to be highly misused. You look at any of these churches, the first thing they quote is Article 25. And actually Article 25 itself has a history. If you look at Article 25 itself, there was initially no proposal of putting the word propagate in the Constitution. It was a handiwork of few sinister members in the Constitution Assembly. Probably people didn't realize the impact it is going to create over the next 60, 70, or 100 years. And today what you see is the granulation of the Article 25. So this is something that I've been recommending not just at the state but at the center also because it's a national issue, and it is going to affect us nationally.
Thank you so much for that, Jerome ji. Points very, very well noted. Rami ji, now, many people, what they say is that there is no formal way of reconverting to Hinduism, so to speak. But perhaps what the Archbishop and the church will also ask is that if you say so, then what are you doing with Ghar Wapsi?
Sharan, I don't think it would be quite right to put it that way, to say that there's no way of reconverting, because actually we can't even leave our way of life and our religion, so just because somebody comes, and this is entirely my opinion, if somebody comes and converts, that doesn't mean this ancient civilization that I belong to, I leave the boundaries of that because it's so intrinsic to me as an individual. This is one of the problems that I find in missionary theology as well, where one of the reasons that they propagate and induce, one of the ways that they do that is by saying that, the caste system will disappear. Does the caste system disappear? You actually have a Dalit theology within, as a branch of the Christian theology, because it doesn't disappear. Our way of life, right, wrong, left, right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't disappear. Dalit theology comes from what was considered liberation theology. Liberation theology started in South America, Africa, where it was proposed as a theology that saved people from poverty, that saved people from all sorts of societal evils, even racism, because Christianity was supposed to be this umbrella that brought everybody together and saved you and gave you freedom. But has that happened? It hasn't happened in India, it hasn't happened in Africa, it hasn't happened in Latin America. So, when we talk about Ghar Wapsi, I mean, it's almost like, saying that people left our society, our society or the boundaries of our civilization, which they never did. They still follow the same way of life, they still follow their practices. The problem with Ghar Wapsi, I find, lies within our society where we find them hard to accept. Them coming back is not a problem. If you were to look at it rationally, they haven't gone anywhere, but there are certain lenses that are discriminatory and detrimental to our civilizational bond, our Sanatan Dharma, that view somebody who has converted just because they have been fed beef, or for other reasons, their previous religious loyalties have been broken, that we find it difficult to accept them. And this is not just about Ghar Wapsi of families and men and women. It's so important to look at it from the point of young children. We discussed this last time, Sharon, where we were talking about love cross, which was akin to love jihad. And so many young girls who had been trapped by these agents, and they probably, to me, are missionary agents, who were trapped by them, who were made to convert, and then, were left to fend for themselves, could not come back to their homes because a society didn't accept them. So I think the problem with Ghar Wapsi a little bit lies with us. But as a solution to this problem, I don't think Ghar Wapsi, is a problem. I think Ghar Wapsi is very natural to us because we've never left to begin with.
Right. Thank you so much. That's very beautifully put. Before we conclude, may I ask both Jerome ji and Esther ji to make your concluding remarks? And also, the Pope is probably going to visit India sometime soon, and the Prime Minister extended his invitation. So, if you would like to add in a word or send a message across, it would be great.
One of the very important and which might seem very crucial is this law can be misused. The reason they're opposing and protesting against the law is it could be misused.
Right.
I mean, the internet is also misused, but it is here, right? Laws are misused all the time and everywhere. That doesn't stop governments from introducing laws. And I'm not saying it's acceptable to misuse laws. It's totally not. And I also accept that as all other laws, even this law may have chances of being misused. But if and when such misuse happens, individual Christians or the church as a whole can complain, right?
Right.
And it should be taken care of. That's exactly what the Archbishop suggested. He suggests that let the law enforcement take care of incidents where there are forceful conversions. We can say the same thing to them. So whenever there is an incident of misuse of this to be introduced law, they can always report it.
Right.
So let the bill pass, and where there is misuse of it, let them complain to the authorities and the law enforcement will take care of it. And the solution is not to not introduce the law or not to let the bill pass.
Thank you so much. Jerome ji, would you like to add on to that in terms of checks and balances and how a proper mechanism can be set up?
For me, as far as the state bill is concerned, it stands the same as what I had mentioned earlier. It will be a toothless tiger, because if you look at the punishment that has been given, it's minuscule. I would recommend the government to look at more at a serious level, at a national level, and it's important for the government to deliberate this particular menace, because it is happening at such a scale which we are not able to estimate. We are underestimating it because the numbers are not what is being told. These are deceptive numbers, very smartly deceptive numbers. The census is going to come. I do not know what the government will do, but there is a serious need to check the conversion, the laws, implement it, and also look at it in a much aggressive way.
Right. Thank you so much. And if the Archbishop or the church were to see this video, the invitation is open to you. Please do join us for a very polite and civil conversation, and we shall be putting across our points to you just the way we have spoken with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and making your time on such a short notice. And we'll see. I mean, viewers, please do let us know what you think about this video and your thoughts in the comment section below. Until then, this is your host Sharan Setty signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sharan.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.